Disaster with Will Carey. I am your host. I appreciate you listening. As I say every week, but I really do appreciate it. Just the fact that if anyone finds this and enjoys it and feels compelled to reach out to me or support me in any way is really amazing, and I appreciate you for being here. Today on the show, we're going to talk to my friend David Lawson. He is a storyteller and comedian in the New York area, and we talk a lot about that because if you're not familiar in comedy, and maybe this is specifically to New York, there's stand-up comics and a stand-up comic community, and then a storytelling community of performers that do mostly long-form stories, but for some reason that doesn't get put together with stand-up, which obviously I think there are long-form stories in stand-up as well. So me and David talk to that. We talk about that. We talk about growing up in the same area, and then we talk about sports for an unusually long amount of time. I've only recently gotten back into watching team sports, but we kind of talk about it in the same way kind of two nerdy guys would talk about sports, which I personally enjoy. And I want to take this opportunity to plug a date. Me and David Lawson are actually going to be doing a double bill of our storytelling shows. Mine is called Laughing Through the Sad, and his is called Flyer Guy. We'll be doing a double bill at Bunga's Den January 23rd at 8 p.m. It's a free show, so if you are in the New York City area, we'll be at Bunga's Den January 23rd at 8 p.m. Free show, and I hope to see some of you out there. So let's go now to my conversation with my good friend David Lawson, and I'll talk to you afterwards. All right.
Started, and then they're like, thank God, because that thing I said 60 seconds ago was brilliant.
I know, right?
Yeah.
I hear a lot of times, like, because I know you and I are both big fans of Mark Maron.
Yeah.
He'll tell stories about, like, after he gets someone off the mic, and then they'll tell him something. He's like, oh, why didn't you say that on the thing?
That's how it always goes, right?
Yeah. You're like, oh, the thing that you didn't hear is the best thing I've ever done.
Have you been heckled at all recently?
Recently? Not terribly.
And the thing about that is, so rarely does the grace of God give you the perfect comeback in that moment.
Exactly.
Almost, I wonder if the percentage is even higher than who hasn't ever been in an argument and you're walking away and you're like, I should have said that instead of this. But with a heckler, it's like, man, oh man, I could have had so many things. I was doing my one-man show, VCR Love, and I did it. There was a woman there with a dog in a bag, and I made a bestiality joke in the show, and she walked out, and everyone was laughing, and I should have done another minute or two about the batshit insanity of that. That's not so much a heckler, but definitely something I was like,
something that would, an organic thing that would have never happened again.
Yes.
I saw the best example of that. Do you know who Carl LeBove is?
I don't know.
He's a stand-up comic, and he was Sam Kinnison's opening act for a number of years. And he was working a one-man show of himself at the old Laughing Devil, which is now the Standing Room. And he's telling this story about how when he was working construction, he got in an accident and he got hit right in the testicles. And he was making an ambulance noise in the story. And then like the second after he makes the ambulance noise, an actual ambulance drives by.
Yeah.
And he goes like, he's just pointing. And he's like, I had to call them 3 hours ago to set that up. It's just like one of those perfect moments of the theater that makes it so exciting.
Yeah, and I'm trying. I'm like trying to top yours because I'm like, that's good, but I think I got one better. And again, this is like probably when I'm riding the 7 home, which I just somewhat revealed where you live, Will Carey. But
it's okay. There's a lot of stops. They'll never find me here.
They'll try them all.
They'll try them all. Well, they're going to have a hard time the next year when the MTA closes a bunch of stops.
I know.
These are very New York problems, but if you're one of the 8 million people who live here, it's very real to you.
I just had a friend who lived in New York City for 11 years and then moved to Germany, give me shit for complaining about subway shutdowns. And I was like, dude, you let me know whenever you're complaining about something in Germany, and I will be a cunt right back at you.
Exactly.
I was like, come on.
Yeah, it's just be like, oh, Bayern Munich aren't doing well this year. That would never happen.
Is that a soccer thing?
That's a soccer thing. Yeah.
I was just watching all of the top 10 rivalries in sports, and and every time they mentioned soccer, I was like, what?
Do you remember any of the soccer ones? I could probably
all right,
fill
so
you in.
number 1 on the list. Number 2 was Red Sox Yankees, which I can absolutely understand, and I blue-blooded American understands that, I guess.
Glad we're from the D.C. Maryland area.
Yeah, right.
We don't have too much stake in that fight. Do the Orioles or the Nationals have any rivalries like that?
The Nationals have like whoever else is competing in the NL East that year.
Okay.
Like last year it was the Mets, and then it was the Braves in 2012, and the Phillies, and it all depends.
Gotcha.
Skins Cowboys was on that list.
Oh, okay. I remember that from my youth growing up in
that's like the big one.
A Redskins
But,
household. But what were the soccer ones?
So the number 1 was what are the 2 in Spain? Real Madrid and
FC Barcelona, probably.
Okay, so what's the political divide? Because it's more than just.
I'm actually really glad you mentioned that. I just started reading a book called Fear and Loathing in La Liga, which is all about their rivalry.
Okay.
And I don't know it all yet.
I don't even know what that title means, Will. I'm so in the dark.
Well, La Liga is the league that they play in Spain. That's like the top tier of soccer in Spain. And Real Madrid and FC Barcelona are usually the 2 top teams that are battling out. It's a little more competitive.
I'm with you so far.
So the start of the rivalry, and this might sound really ridiculous now in the current political climate, more or less Real Madrid historically had ties to he wasn't a dictator, but Francesco in Spain. So Real Madrid was siding with like the establishment and Barcelona, who represent a region in Spain known as Catalonia, which have historically been trying to break away from Spain and become independent. Barcelona are viewed as the freedom fighters. They like represent not the downtrodden, but they represent the people more or less, whereas Real Madrid represents the establishment, and it like goes back to like the Spanish Civil War. Now these are all things that don't really have too much of a bearing on the teams now.
Here's the question I have about that. Does it come down to stuff like you'll have a player who is just a free agent who just came, who has no investment even in the country of Spain, who could come and play for one of those teams and be a part of this sectarian rivalry?
He would be a part of the rivalry if he is on one of those teams.
Like,
yes.
I am so fascinated whenever there's like a really popular guy in the New York Yankees who is just a complete, like from Alabama, and just like a total like Southern. Oh, I just got here, New York, like
New York City,
and they have no investment but this guy hates the Red Sox,
right?
Because he wears the pinstripes.
Exactly. Now imagine this. And imagine like, if like one of the Yankees' big players were to ever go and play for the Red Sox.
Yeah, what just happened, obviously.
Yeah, a la Babe Ruth. So I can't I'm going to blank on the guy's name, but the details of this, but I believe someone on Barcelona, a really famous player, went from Barcelona to Real Madrid, and when they came back to play in the games between Madrid and Barcelona are called the El Clasico. That's the name
I
of those
learned this
teams.
from that list that I'm referring
Right.
to.
So I think so. If I remember correctly, Barcelona fans threw a pig's head at this guy.
Huh. Now that's another thing. There's gonna be a lot of me admitting ignorance here because.
Well, that's okay. That's what.
Now,
we're
does
here
a pig's
for.
head vary in size? Is this a baby's pig's head? Is this a typical, maybe the size of a soccer ball pig's head?
Yeah, it's a pretty good sized pig's head.
Yeah.
Like it's reminiscent of like when I heard that I thought of The Godfather, and I know it's a horse head in The Godfather, but more or less represents you have to be pretty upset with someone to throw dead severed heads at
Was
them.
that recently?
This was like in the last couple like 20 years or so. So
Okay, because
not
I was going to
terribly
say
recently,
that
but-
seems like a not post 9/11 war on terror world. Like, he got a pig's head in the stadium. How the fuck did he do that?
Right.
Because you're getting the bag checked and all that.
Yeah, they would probably hear the sloshing sound of the pig. This is good, man, because I only recently got really back into soccer. I had never was a sports guy for much of my youth, but I got really back into it last year, partly because I didn't think that you could be like an artist and also like sports, but being around the comedy and the circles you run in, which are the storytelling community, a lot of people like sports.
Yeah. And I always think it goes hand in hand. I think it's just so theatrical, and it's so there is like the same kind of like emotional stakes in it.
Right.
And to me it's just, I always say it's the most like harmless hobby you can have.
Yeah, it really.
Like, I'm bored, I'll check some scores, watch a game, because the bad news is never that bad unless it's something like, to go back to the Reds, like Sean Taylor dying. I remember being like, wow, this is like one of those things that supersedes sports. But it's like, a loss isn't that big of a deal. And when it's good news, it's amazing. It's great
Yeah,
news.
you feel really good. Like if you decide, all right, I'm going to invest in this team. If they do well, you do well. And one thing I didn't get, and I don't know if you do this, you know when you're talking to sports fans about their team, they'll use the term "we" a lot.
Which I never do.
Yeah, I try not to do it either. I'll say, oh, they did this, and then he did that.
It might have something to do with the fact that I root for horrible. I grew up 15 miles outside of Washington, D.C. I love the Caps, the Wizards, the Redskins, the Nationals.
Yeah.
Yeah, bad stuff.
Yeah, like you just. I used to like, why do people do that? You didn't do anything. But there's one situation where I think it's okay, and I don't want to put too much of a date stamp on this, but the Skins are playing the Green Bay Packers right now.
Right fucking
now, and you're doing my show.
Yeah.
Thank you, David.
I knew, I knew this was going to happen. If you actually want to talk like freaks versus jocks, yeah, I'm not a jock. I'm gonna miss a fucking football game to do a comedy podcast.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The jock goes to the game like if is like, yes, I know you're 9 months pregnant, but the Patriots.
If this was not the first round of the playoffs, we might have rescheduled.
Oh, I would have been okay with that.
Yeah.
Because I know how I get around the time the MLS season is winding down. I'm like, okay, if we can win these games, we can get this many points, and then we'll be in this place. And then if these other teams lose, then New York City FC can get into the playoffs.
So that's your team, New York City FC.
New York City FC is my team in America, and then I do enjoy Barcelona in Spain as well.
Cool.
So get back to my original point about the Packers. And correct me if I'm wrong, they're the only team that are like owned by the fans. Like they're not owned by like a major conglomerate or like a single millionaire with money.
I don't know if that's still the fact. I know they started that way when the NFL was much smaller, because I've heard this story before that everybody like put shares in like it was like a nonprofit theater. They had like subscribers as opposed to shareholders. But I really have no clue if that's the case anymore, to which I'm like praying for the show to be popular enough that comic Will Carey on Twitter
Yes.
will
Let me know.
filled with tweets of people being like, how did you guys not know that?
It's because we follow different sports.
It's because we're at comedy clubs and theaters,
Yeah, we're at comedy clubs
4 to
and
7 nights a
blacks-
week.
and black box theaters.
Yeah,
And we're looking at set lists and not
exactly.
and not Bleacher.
I'm mumbling in my head about, the night Bobby ate dog vomit.
Mm-hmm.
Because I want to get all the jokes and beats right. I
Exactly.
don't have a story about eating dog vomit, but
Well, there's still time, David. So you grew up. So you were sports into sports when you were a little kid.
yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Was that like a bonding thing with your parents or your dad maybe?
A little bit. My father grew up in Flint, Michigan, and he like barely.
Ooh, Flint.
Yeah, I know, right? And it wasn't as. I feel like it wasn't as tough. I mean, it's so fucked up there now, right?
Right.
I keep being like, "Hey, Dad, like, hey, how about that water thing?" He's like, "Oh, Jesus, David. Oh my God, that town." But he was like a Tigers fan, a Michigan State fan, and I think I got some osmosis from him. He used to take me to George Mason University basketball games. That was one of the things I like really fell in love, because I grew up 15 miles from pretty much all the DC stadiums, but George Mason University was like a 10-minute drive from my folks' place, and I used to love going to those games. And yeah, I think I think that was like my first exposure, and I just started being like, oh, this is fun to follow and to see who's doing good and who's doing bad and all the quirky personalities in the locker room. And what about you? How did you?
Well, I was playing soccer. I started playing soccer when I was probably when I was really young, because my mother didn't want me to play football because she thought I'd get hurt. So she's like, okay, well, you can play soccer. So I was like, okay. So I think that's really where the seed of it started. And like I had my good friend, like my friends were on other teams, but we would play together, and that's kind of where it started. I didn't know. Growing up where I did in like southern Maryland, it's mostly about American football, so I didn't have too many outlets to learn about the Premier League or Barcelona until much later, when my old roommate got me back in and we started watching the World Cup.
And I didn't even get the magnitude of like World Cup soccer till I moved here in 2008.
Mm-hmm.
Because I've now been here I've been here for 2 World Cups.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was 2010 and 2014.
And it's madness. Like, I remember there being madness when I was a kid, like the halls of my high school, but that has nothing to do with just like in Astoria, like every fucking Greek person on 45th Street in Midtown, like that little like stretch of Brazilian, like just madness. Everybody.
Insanity.
And the thing I love about it, if you want to talk about how like sports and culture go hand in hand.
I really am interested in how sports gets integrated into culture.
It's, to me, like World Cup in New York, it's so cool. Like everyone getting together, you're all speaking the same language, you all got stories from the same towns, you're eating the same food, and why? Because of a game. Because you're all watching a game.
Exactly. And like in that moment, we're all not so different, except for the people that are on the opposite sides or what have you.
And even that, like, I'm actually a little nervous. A friend of mine, a very kind gift, but he got me tickets for Caps Islanders next month.
Oh, yeah?
And I have not done the away fan thing in years. That's not true. I did a Nationals Mets game when the Nats were great and the Mets were awful just 2 years ago.
Yeah.
But
well, it's funny that you bring this up. I've never done the away fan thing in America, but you know my story about getting chased out of RCD Español Stadium, right?
Yes, I think I have.
That
heard this
was
one.
this. It's I'm glad it happened now because I didn't get hurt, but oh my God, that was terrifying.
And it's way more
moment.
serious.
It's really serious in other countries. Like I'd never experienced that level of bile directed at me.
Now, here's the question I have for you, because I know some soccer fans, and I'm going to call it soccer because I'm a fucking American here. All right, we're not. No, all right, but football, football.
Football, FUTBO, squiggly L.
I know some football fans who shit on American sports fans thinking that it's like, oh, it's not as hardcore. And I'm like, I don't really need like hooliganism at Citi
hooliganism.
Field when I'm just trying to eat
Yeah.
my Italian sausage and watch a game,
Yeah, I don't like that either. Like at most soccer at most soccer games, there'll be like a supporter stadium where people jump up and down and sing the entire show.
Oh, look at that.
Game.
Freudian slip. It's all coming to the culture and the sports. Yeah.
I also once did say, I auditioned for the soccer team in middle school.
And
I once said that.
And practice instead of rehearsal. That's happened. Yeah.
Yeah, so I don't like hooliganism for the same way I don't like snooty theater goers.
Oh, of course, the worst.
Like the bad fans of anything will ruin the experience for anyone else, and it'll keep new people from wanting to see something. Like I kind of like that. Let me get my thought back here. So if you watch enough soccer, it can be different teams play different ways. Like some teams play very physical, and there's some bad injuries because everyone has spikes on their shoes.
Yeah,
it's gonna happen eventually. One thing I don't like when people criticize soccer. I hate hooliganism, but I also don't like when people try to call soccer boring, because yes, it's a low-scoring game, but football also has a lot of stops and starts.
Here, I'll tell you,
breaks.
I'm going to make your blood boil right now.
Okay.
Because I personally never got into soccer, but you know who I think are the worst snooty American fans? Are
soccer fans.
My big beef is with these like hockey people who are like, why isn't hockey more popular? And I'm just like, yeah, man, to play hockey, you need money, you need rink time and all this equipment.
Yeah,
it's not gonna ever. It's never
pads.
gonna be. Yeah,
you need rink time, pads, skates. And then you probably got to learn to skate.
Exactly.
And you need a stick.
All this stuff, and then people are like, well, what about these? Why does Phoenix get a team? And I'm just like, dude, like,
you got money.
Do you want your? It's like that cuts. I don't know. The hockey thing annoys me, but when I was a teenager, I used to say to people, "Oh yeah, they took soccer, put it on ice, and made it more exciting, and called it ice hockey." That's like that's the exact snootiness. That's like me at 17, to be fair. But yeah, because I've been to a few soccer games. I went to a New York, New Jersey Metro Stars game at Giants Stadium.
Taking it way back.
On a Jewish day camp trip.
Okay.
Way back. Yeah, and I actually did go to a Red Bulls game their first year in Harrison, New Jersy. And I had a lot of fun.
Yeah, the games are fun, and their stadium is really and their stadium's really nice. They're just a team owned by an energy drink.
I know, it's so weird, and that is the funny thing about soccer too is I've kind of like, I definitely have shit on my friends who are like from some of these Western European countries, and they're like, oh, everything's so corporatized here. I'm like, oh yeah, because we have like an Airways thing all over our shirts when we're playing sports.
Yeah.
And like New York Red, it just goes hand in hand with that. They just don't have as much of that here, I guess.
Yeah.
I just think it is so funny that all these much more like progressive socialism leaning countries have what is it, Qatar Airways?
Qatar Airways.
Whenever I see people
and
like
Emirates
I'm like, did you spend $70 on a soccer jersey that's an ad? Like, I mean, they're all ads,
no, dude,
right?
I got a bunch of them too that have the logo on them. There's at least one team where you can get it without the sponsor, but then it costs more. Yeah, obviously. This is good. I never get to talk about this
sports.
Stuff. I don't.
Any other guests talk sports on the show?
Not Alexis Guerreros and Christian Polanco, because they're big sports guys.
My
too.
favorite comedian who can talk sports is Bill Burr.
Yeah. Yeah, he's great at that.
Like, he had a Monday morning podcast recently where he did play-by-play for 2 minutes of a Bulls Celtics game, just a meaningless whatever, November game. And someone put his commentary over the 2 minutes from the game, and it was so fucking funny.
Oh, I'm gonna have to watch that. They should get more comedians to do play-by-play. I think it'd make it more
Remember,
interesting.
oh God, remember they tried Dennis Miller in the early 2000s for Monday Night Football?
I luckily don't remember that.
Yeah, that was a rough one.
Yeah.
And they tried Tony Kornheiser, who I grew up loving, reading at the Washington Post.
Mm-hmm.
Also a rough one. So
I think they should get the Sklar brothers.
And I don't know them. That's one of those guys I've heard. Are they the 21 Jump Street people?
I don't know if that's...
And I'm not confusing them with the Lucas brothers, who I know are in those movies.
I don't know if... I never saw that movie, but they have a podcast called Scarblower. Scarblower?
I definitely have seen that. You know how it is. There's so much stuff out there.
I know. You see, there's so much out that you forget what you've seen, and it's impossible to keep up with anything. And then you get to the parties on all this stuff like way past when everyone else has got into it.
But the cool thing is when the thing I've heard about and then I give it a shot and then it becomes like something I'm obsessed with.
I know. I love when that happens.
I started listening to WTF in 2013 when he was a few years into that show and heard people talking about it. And I didn't even feel late to the part. At this point, I've been listening to like a third of the show's history, like every single Monday and Thursday.
Definitely.
And God, I love it. It's such a great show.
Me too. There's just something about, and that's sort of what I I'm trying to do with this is try to create I feel like you can create kind of a deep connection with people from doing the podcast more so than maybe something else.
Yeah.
And specifically this kind of one where it's like an interview and a discussion kind of show.
Yeah, and I interview is like one of those words that everybody feel like is shying away from doing podcasts. Because interview, I think, denotes like you will ask me a question.
Amount of journalism.
I will give you, that too, right? But like question, answer, potential follow-up. Question, answer, potential follow-up. It's like,
right.
Jesus, like enough.
Yeah, I try to I figure because... Exactly. I'd rather go off on a tangent and talk about a thing. And I figure, I'll get a question and I'll learn about David's life and dark secrets.
Yeah.
At some point during the show.
Will we get there?
Yeah. Well, because, and I think I said this one other time when we were talking, when I first met you, I was like, I think I feel like I could vibe with that dude. And then come to learn that we have really similar backgrounds. Like we're from the same part of the country, like the Maryland, DC area. Both kind of grew up in theater.
Yeah.
And that's and I'm kind of really interested in tracing our paths because I feel like we're on on similar wavelengths in comedy because I don't see the schism. I don't necessarily agree with the schism that people talk about. And I know I've mentioned this to you before, the schism between the stand-up community and the storytelling community.
I have a friend who her name's Melissa Gordon. She had this one-woman show called Fresh, which is just characters. And it had a 6-month run at UCB. Melissa Gordon, we were talking about this one night, and she said, stand-ups are the only people who can say, I am a comic. But storytelling comedians, improv, sketch, characters could all say they're comedians.
I agree.
And to me, that is easy. But some people will call you on that. And storytelling is my favorite. That's my favorite branch of comedy right now. Storytelling, which to me, I came to it from one-person shows. That's like my favorite thing to do and to see in any medium, period.
Yeah.
We're all in a room. There's one person on stage.
Talking about themselves or something very specific. And then you can come out of it with a greater understanding. And also,
and you sit down knowing what you're getting into. And don't get me wrong, I love punchline comedy, but with one person shows, it's like you sit down and I cannot wait to hear this story of the summer she spent working at this all-girls summer camp, and 6 people tried killing themselves, and 4 people got busted with weed. I'm tell them, let's hear that hour of those stories. I sat down to hear that, not just sat down to hear I want to hear X do jokes.
Right. Whose show was that?
That was Courtney Antonioli, actually.
That sounds like a good show.
Courtney Goes to Camp, because back in November I did SoloCom, the People's Improv Theater's solo performance festival. And which right there, right? A comedy club has a one-person show festival. There's the schism right there. But oh my God! And the great thing about it, I got to give credit to the Pit. If you were in the festival, you could see anything for free, and I saw 8 shows as a result because I was there.
Nice.
Well,
Sure.
And that probably was my favorite thing I saw. Courtney Goes to Camp by Courtney Antonioli.
Oh, awesome! I hope she's still doing it because that sounds.
I got to tell her to listen to this. There's Plug City.
Yeah, we'll have links, and I'll get links in all the descriptions.
Yeah.
On all the platforms because I love listening to things, and I love when I'm listening to something I like and discovering a new thing.
And my thing is too, it's just also easier for me to get into an unknown person by what's it about? Give me the log line. Give me a sentence or two. Oh, that sounds great. No, right. I had seen Courtney Antonioli before, but that I feel like you said, it seemed like you kind of got sold on that premise.
Right. It's I think it's easier to sell like a one-man show by an unknown than it is to sell a comedy show with a bunch of unknowns.
And Will, I mean, how many times have people been like...
I'm doing both, and I'm sorry, what were you saying?
I wonder if this makes your blood boil, like, oh, what do you write jokes about?
I never know how to answer that. I say, I do. I mostly will go to, I do observational humor. I do autobiographical stories. And
it's so much harder. Like Wikipedia has
so generic to say that.
They have the breakdown on comedians' pages, and they're like frequent topics, and it's like sex, recreational drug use, politics. Yeah, that's what they all fucking do. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying like Louis C.K.'s bit and Dave Chappelle's bit and Sarah Silverman's bit on any one of those is going to be completely fucking different.
Exactly. You just hear the same topic and go, oh, stand-up comedy is so played out.
Yeah.
I'm not going to comedy clubs. And then also, the comedy club...
I wasn't saying that, though. There was a straw man argument, Will, and now I am the angry one.
I would be the worst. I think I'd be a pretty good straw man. I'd just be like, I have a point, and then I say the point, and then they go, oh, well, that also makes a lot of sense, too.
There is on YouTube a great clip of Michelle Bachmann just using straw man argument. It's so good. What were you saying? Oh, we're all over the place.
Oh, it's okay. Well, we were talking about the kind of the differences of one storytelling versus comedy. So you can sell a topic and go, oh, that sounds interesting. I'd like to hear that. Like you can sell the subject matter, even if you don't know the person. Whereas I think with comedy, it's so hard because how often is everybody on a show going to fit everybody's expectation of what comedy is?
Yeah.
It's just never gonna happen. And that's why you see a lot of times like, oh, well, I'll make sure I have people with credits, or I'll have a show that has like an interesting hook, which is why in like I think a lot of the alternative rooms, there's honestly, I think more creativity because you have shows that have like and I do this too, like you have a show that has like a hook that isn't just like a straight stand-up.
I mean, you can use that is basically like that, right?
Basically, yeah. It's like a interesting hook. It's like an interesting thing of like, oh, okay, that would be interesting. I'll go and see that.
And I hate that I've missed that one. There's so many shows.
There are so many shows. Like if we had the time, like if we had have the time to see all the shows we want, we would have to be doing meth.
Because, and I do, and I feel like I do all right, but this is all, it's a great thing about New York because when you're there, I made it, like
exactly.
But you can use that, and the thing I love about that show, which is your show at the Creek in the Cave, which is
fourth Thursday, 8 p.m.
Beautiful. Look at that. Is I have done that with people, because I host a all mic show at the Astoria Bookshop, and I host a half mic, half booked show at QED, and sometimes someone will tell me a story, and I will basically be like, "Come tell that at the bookshop, second Tuesday, 7:00, free show." And I feel like it is like it's a half a step away from me saying, "Oh, you can use that," you know? Like someone tells me something awful that happened to them, and I'll just be like, I'm sorry, but that's really funny.
Yeah.
And you should use that. Like,
Yeah, I love stuff like that. Like just that thing that gets you really excited to go and like talk to a person, be like, "That's good. You have to keep doing that."
I want to also piggyback on something you said about, the alternative rooms versus kind of the clubby clubs. I actually think the Creek and the Cave straddles the two pretty well.
I think so.
Because it does have like a really raw, clubby feel to it.
Yeah.
Yet it also, the main room is basically a black box theater.
Yes.
And Rebecca Trent has a theater studies degree from Radford University. She grew up not far from me, actually. She went to West Potomac High School. So, like, I literally heard her in an interview, like, talking about Maria Fornes, like this super experimental Latina playwright. And
Right.
this is a woman who, if you go to her venue on any given night, you will hear like, "Oh, ejaculating when you have hemorrhoids is great," you know.
Exactly.
So that is talk about the schism.
People will do shows naked.
Exactly.
And just pretty much any wacky, wild idea, she's at least open to
And
hear.
then a lot of nights it's just punchline comedy, and not just. I'm trying not to.
Right.
But
no,
it's,
yeah,
you
there's
know.
there's a certain there is I love nothing I love more than like a really satisfying setup punch joke with a good twist. But
Is that your favorite, by the way? Is straight punchline stand up?
God, I don't even like. Can you give me an example of what that might be? Because like my favorite comedian right now is probably Bill Burr.
Okay.
I really love him, and I of course love Maron. I love guys. I love well-crafted jokes, which is why I love David Tell, because the craftsmanship of the words is just so satisfying.
Mm-hmm.
But I also just love, like, I love a guy or a girl just sitting down and just telling me about this happened to me.
Now here's one thing about Bill Burr, because I love him. I've watched like 3 of the specials.
Mm-hmm.
They're all great. I listen to that show all the time. It's one of my favorite shows.
Mm-hmm.
So his stand-up is more kind of his awesome rant thing, because that guy is just a fucking riff machine, you know?
Yeah.
He'll just have premise, boom, ba boom, boom, ba boom, boom, ba boom. And on his podcast, lots of stories.
Yeah.
Very much more storytelling comedian on his podcast, which is interesting. Like that's almost his way of walking the two.
Yeah. Yeah, you can definitely do like the medium of podcasting gives you, I think, a lot more freedom to not always have to be funny. Because if you're doing a comedy, I feel like a comedy show, I feel like you have to have a lot of laughs.
Yeah.
And otherwise, it just becomes performance art.
Yeah.
Is the joke that a lot of comedians, I think, make, which is sort of demeaning to performance art.
Which they probably, if they came to one of my shows, they'd be like, "Oh, performance art," because
I like your stuff, man. You're not like smearing blood on a canvas and like.
And the thing I never
your dick.
want to be is the first time I met you, Will, was at the dump at the Creek in the Cave, Jake Hart's excellent storytelling show.
Yeah.
And Jake had been doing jokes about the moth, and he shits on the moth all the time, and I could see why. And you made a thing. It's like, oh yeah, every moth story, you have to have a moment where, and you put your hands right near your face, and you have to say the line.
Yeah. And in that moment,
Exactly. You remember
you
it
have
exactly?
to do it.
Yeah.
And then you spread your hands out slightly away.
That is what I never want to be.
No, I don't want to be that either.
And in that moment, I looked into my then ex-wife's eyes, you know.
And you can't see the face he's making, but it is like the perfect
I'm about to cry.
public radio I'm about to cry face. Which, again, I love all that stuff too, but I sometimes harbor a slight bit of resentment towards people that only don't identify as like performers or comedians, but do storytelling. And I just go, I'm funnier than you.
Yeah.
I can be funny and interesting.
You feel that way at storytelling shows mainly?
Mostly.
Yeah.
Mostly. Not the dump ever, because I'm just like, man, all these people are really fucked up, and
What
I really like it.
What I love about the dump is, like, I do want to hear, because they're crazy stories. That's my favorite thing. This isn't a story I heard at the dump, but at QED recently, there was a blind man who was booked on a bill there, and he had a story about the night he was like he lived in San Francisco, and he was like, I'm feeling free. Let's roll down all the windows. I'm going to get behind the driver's seat. You coach me if anything goes wrong. I want to go 70 miles per hour over the Golden Gate Bridge. This is a blind guy driving a car. The story was so funny and so that is a crazy thing that happened. I want to hear that, you know.
Definitely.
Like more than just like ho-hum.
Sure.
You know.
Oh, yeah. No, that kind of stuff's the best. That's the stuff that you don't even need to have experienced to get excitement and enjoyment out of. I love just people who really live on the edge that you can live vicariously through.
And Jake has one, you know, just like I can't remember
because we're not really the living on the edge kind of guys. Stuff kind of happens to us.
Yeah, I feel like I'm out there enough to at least be in the mix of crazy shit. I feel like you too. I mean, you know, that whole
Yeah, I'm definitely the guy I definitely think I'm the straight man in a sitcom, and I'm just sort of like, oh my God, what is going on around me?
Yeah.
Oh, and now the police are here. Okay.
See, I don't know about living on like totally on the edge, but you know, it's a little like it's not as. I mean, your story about the whole like in Turkey when the country's falling apart.
Oh yeah, that was a fun day.
You know, that's pretty on. That's more on the edge than just like, and that is how I lost my first girlfriend. You know.
Yeah, I'm trying to move away from that. I have one of those stories that's like that, but I am definitely trying to move away from that. Can you tell me, David, the first solo performance that really blew your mind and when that happened?
Yeah. In fact, I had a cool thing recently where I put up a clip from the show I'm doing now, Flyer Guy, which is about, I've been a Times Square Flyer Guy for 3 years for the Discovery Museum, handing out coupons. And that story is about all the crazy shit that I've seen, if you want to talk about that, and that's happened to me. And I put up a clip for it on YouTube, and Tim Miller, who's this one-man show guy, that's what he's, you know, and he doesn't shy away. He's like performance artist, you know.
Right.
But I saw him in 2004 at the Boston Center of the Arts do the show called Us. And it was so funny. And he got naked in the end. And when it was dirty comedy, it was like filthy comedy. He had like, and he had jokes in there where he was just like, oh yeah, I went out in the morning and I did some yoga. And it felt like the sun was going into my asshole. But I do one-man shows. I don't think the sun goes into my asshole. I think it comes out of my asshole. Like, and stuff like that I was just like, this is so funny. I saw that. That was the first time I had ever seen one person alone on stage with a narrative arc. Like, the whole show is about how musicals made him gay. And there is some serious shit to that, but also, like, I didn't know Oliver. Have you seen the movie or the musical?
No, I haven't.
But he's just like, yeah, it's about a bunch of little boys being led around by a man named Fagin. And I was like, that is so fucking funny. So it was called Us by Tim Miller. I was 18 years old. I saw that and I was like, you can do that. And I put up this clip on Facebook recently, and we're Facebook friends, even though we've never actually been like, hi, I'm Tim, hi, I'm David, one of those types of things.
Sure.
And he was just like, watch this, loved this, hope I can catch it in New York. And I did not shy away. I'm like, Tim, I saw you when I was 18 years old, and that was one of the things that got the ball rolling. You have no fucking clue how much this means. So,
oh, that's great.
Yeah.
And, do you think he's going to come?
he's from somewhere in California. I'll keep bothering him. I don't know if he's going to come to ours at Bunga's Den again.
And we'll make sure to plug that really efficiently
Awesome.
at the end of the show, because I'm
Sweet.
looking forward to doing a show with you, man.
Yeah.
We gotta get someone. Do we need a host? Do you think, or just you and I go
No,
straight?
I
straight
think
into
just
it?
doing one then the other.
I like it.
Yeah.
I'm hip to it.
I actually am going to experiment with. I usually don't do hosts at all for my shows, but I'm doing Flyer Guy again at the Experiment in February, and
great.
I'm gonna experiment with having. I didn't mean to do that. I'm gonna
I
experiment.
will make sure to go to that one.
Yeah, it's February something. But I'm gonna try having a guy do a song introduce 2 opening acts, and then I do the 40-minute show. Because I have never, almost like a stand-up set in a way, like the feature or the middle or the headliner.
Totally.
Except with a one-person show. But yeah, Tim Miller was that. It's not like I feel like I'm like softening. He's not like the one I always come back to. People like Spalding Gray and Mike Daisy are the people I come back to all the time.
I love Spalding Gray.
Yeah.
When I was my senior year of college, my thesis professor gave me his DVD of Swimming to Cambodia, which you still can't find anywhere, and it just blew my mind.
Not to like take money away from his estate, but I think it's on YouTube.
Yeah,
the whole thing.
Okay, well, I'm gonna have to watch it again because I love Swimming to Cambodia. Like just again, and Spalding kind of straddled that line. Like he was definitely doing long form more theatrical minded performance, but he had laughs. Like the story in Swimming to Cambodia where he talks about the noisy downstairs neighbors.
Yeah.
And comparing.
Bet you want to die, bitch. Yeah.
Goes louder.
Yeah.
Like stuff like that. Like he could. That's a bit.
Yeah.
Like I think he was definitely the guy that opened me more than just straight setup punchline. Because like starting stand up in Baltimore at the time in sports bars and like 2 drink minimum clubs, you kind of get a narrow window of again just set up punch. And then he was like the guy that made me go, oh, that's a thing also. And then I came around to that when I started going to Jake Hart's show.
Yeah, really. So that's what got you into like the whole. Because sometimes I even say to people are like, storytelling show, like, what's this going to be, a cry fest? And then sometimes I'm like, well, it's just like my favorite part of stand-up, and it's nothing but that all night. For better and for worse, like anything. But like,
yeah.
Because I always, like, I love, like, the whole Dave Chappelle thing about, like, where's 3rd Street? You're on 3rd Street. Like, talking to a cop while you're high. That whole thing is a story arc. And him, and he has, and in his other special, I loved him growing in high school when he has the story about the guy jacking off on the bus. That is a 5-minute story, just littered with jokes.
Exactly, and any good comedian will be able to do that long form stuff. Like, here's a guy, Billy Gardell. Billy Gardell is a guy who he does that long form stuff, or Ron White. I love guys that can just kind of set up a really good yarn,
I'm wondering. I haven't watched it yet. It's very new, but Tom Segura, who I've seen on This Is Not Happening, the amazing comedy storytelling show that Comedy Central does. I caught it live at the Bell House during New York, and it was great. Pete Davidson, Jim Florentine was awesome. But Tom Segura was amazing on This Is Not Happening when he was on that show. And his new stand-up special is called, do you know what it's called?
Mostly Stories.
Mostly fucking Stories. And I'm just like, oh, another little something. Because I even remember when like Birbiglia, when those 2 specials came out, I had some friends who were like, what? Stories? And I'm like, it's not that new. Right, but it is. Like I just the flip side of it is actually, to go back to Spalding Gray, Swimming in Cambodia. Like the ending of that show, you would never go over in a comedy club.
Never.
Do you remember? I mean,
in the movie, I think he says, "I know what killed Marilyn Monroe."
Exactly, but the whole thing is just this very ethereal. It almost like ends emotionally and not. I don't even mean like it has an emotional ending, not a narrative ending, where he's just like, I'm on the plane. The pillow was very comfortable. And as I was comfortable on the plane, I had a thought that I know what killed Marilyn Monroe. If you had said that at a comedy club and said goodnight, everyone would be like, what? Yeah, exactly.
What the fuck?
But in a theater, people are like,
yeah,
cool,
good.
awesome, great.
And you can just fade to black and then applause erupts.
Yes.
So you're 8. So you were 18 when. And did you get into Spalding Gray around that time as well? When did you get into
That was a little later. I actually went to Emerson College, same college that both Bill Burr and Spalding Gray went to bring a little full circle to all this. But yeah, a little later in college, I watched all, Monster in a Box and Grey's Anatomy and,
Definitely. And and what did you go to school for again?
Theater.
Theater.
Yep.
And what was your did you have like a track of study? Was it acting?
It was acting, but all my favorite courses in college were all drama lit.
Mm-hmm.
Loved reading plays.
Yeah.
Loved talking with smart professors about plays. Blew my mind open. I wasn't exposed to that. That's the best thing I got out of college was I didn't know who August Wilson was. I didn't know who Samuel Beckett was. I didn't know who Ian Esco was. I didn't know these people, and I got my mind blown reading like Rhinoceros and Endgame and Fences, all these great shows. You know, I had no clue.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Cool. So you were going to be an actor in like going out for parts, or were you going specifically for solo performance at the time?
Solo performances is pretty much, let's see, since my junior year of college was when I really started doing that. I did some open mic nights in Wiseacres Comedy Club in Tyson's Corner, Virginia. What a horrible night that was.
Oh, the worst. Bad.
But
bad vibes.
yeah, I even remember being like 16 a few months after my license at Wiseacres being like, why are all these adults just shitting on me? Like, I'm never going to come back here. Fuck all of you, you know? Oh, wow, got a little aggro there. But yeah, I did do the actor route, but always, and I did the playwright route, but the thing that's always been with me for almost 10 years now has been one-person shows.
Yeah.
You know, stories and themes, you know.
Gotcha.
You know.
What and this is actually something that I was interested in telling you in asking you about as far as the building of a one-person show, going on stories and themes. Can you take me through the construction of one of your shows and how you built it?
Yeah.
Like, maybe doesn't matter which one. Maybe like the one you think was like the one that you cite to that was very pivotal, or like your favorite one.
So VCR Love is probably the one. I got that published by Original Works Publishing. You can still buy it. It charted on Amazon, right? Yeah, which I soon found out doesn't mean much. even like a comedy book. I've heard people on podcasts be like, "Oh, yeah, I went to number 5." I don't even know if it sold 200 copies. Like, you know,
like going to number 5, you don't need to sell as much as you maybe think you do.
That algorithm is wild.
Interesting.
So VCR Love is about pornography.
Okay.
And I knew I wanted to do a show with personal stories and with greater world theme stories about pornography. And the thing I wanted to do is how pornography, thus the title, has changed as technology has progressed. To me, there's no more exciting way to look at the prism of the digital age than watching naked people. It's so fascinating to me. And that one got booked. I did a Dixon Place where you've done your shows,
Yes.
and the Brick in Brooklyn. And a Secret Theater did some of it there, you know, and that one had some legs for a while. Parkside Lounge. I'm naming all this, but let me get back to the thing. So I basically sat down and still have this huge document that's just filled with bullet points, as many stories and as many themes as I can remember. And I knew, so I got all that, vomit all that out there.
Okay.
All these stories, all these themes. And as I'm vomiting out all these bullet points, I'm realizing, okay, there's a trajectory to this show that starts in the VHS era, me being like a kid watching, you know, my dad rents Animal House, and I like just, you know, watch the first naked woman I ever saw was Belushi, the Ladder, watching the woman strip. And then it goes all the way up to like these like jerk off instruction videos on Pornhub. You know, there was like an arc of just like, when did an hour of porn become free? So I realized that was the arc, and then I filled in all the bits, you know, and that one kind of alternates between me like riffing on something like jerk off instruction videos and like more of like a story about, you know, stealing porn from Sam Goody with my friends.
Cool.
So I think that the answer.
So you kind of had a bunch of stories that were centered around pornography and technology, and then you kind of were able to piece the narrative from that.
To be like, okay, I think this is what it's starting to look like. I think this is the opening story. I think I'm closing with this. And that's the thing, and I feel like I write. If I were to read every single thing I I wrote for a lot of these solo shows. I think most of them, I think my average solo show is about 60, 70 minutes. And for that, I write 2 to 2.5 hours.
Okay.
I think those numbers are right.
Yeah, and then you whittle it down from there.
Yeah, love it. But the biggest thing, I love outlining. Love just putting down all the ideas I have on a theme.
Okay.
And then going from there.
Okay, cool. Because the reason I'm asking you this is because I'm still, I'm still in the stages of trying to work out the theme in my show, which I'm calling Laughing Through the Sad right now.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm actually, the part of the reason I'm looking forward to us doing a show together is I'm very interested in your feedback on overall how everything pieces together, because I definitely know how I'm going to open, I know how I'm going to close, and I'm still working on a lot of the connective tissue.
Yeah.
I know all of the stories individually. There's a lot of stuff I've done, like just story, like one at a time. But it's my first time where I'm piecing together and building a narrative and following like the character of me, like what his journey is, which sounds kind of pretentious to talk about myself in the third person like that. But because I don't want it to just be a collection of stories. Like for it to be a show, I think it has to follow there's got to be, like a rising action and then like a climax and then a resolution.
Yeah. And see, the thing is I don't even know if it needs to follow something even like that classically, even if it's just a journey of some kind. I mean, hell, that Spalding Gray show that's not a resolution. No. That's a guy on an airplane.
That is a guy on
He literally could end the show that says, I got on the airplane after the movie was over, and I was on an airplane. Thanks. Like, I guess... Because I never know how much they have to follow and that's actually one thing that does piss me off about workshopping shows within theater is how often overly traditionalist shit gets applied and kills like
what the thing is.
Yeah, like in playwriting, some people will be like, well, why is that scene in there? Why is that scene in there? And sometimes it's like, it's just a cool thing that's going to happen in the room on stage. It has like...
Yeah. Yeah, and I think sometimes if you get bogged down in formula or in academia, that's where you miss out on those cool things.
Like, imagine if someone told Samuel Beckett Waiting for Godot, why does he try hanging himself if they have a purpose to live? Aren't they waiting for this person to come who I think is, it seems like is going to improve their lives? But there's that part in the second act where he goes to hang himself. Mm-hmm. He takes his belt and he goes to hang himself and his pants fall down. It's one of the funniest fucking parts of the play. I don't give a shit if it's a little like, where did that come from?
Right. Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. Like sometimes the things like in movies that people are always like, that wouldn't happen like that, or that's weird, or that didn't happen. It's like, sometimes it's just okay to do cool things.
By the way, I hope we're picking up the siren.
Oh, yeah. We talked about this before, like the realness of a New York podcast.
That is like the New York podcast way.
Yeah, let's just point the microphone to the siren. They're coming for us. Wouldn't it be hilarious if there was like a podcast that existed where someone, like the police burst in and then arrested people? That would be a fun sketch.
Did you see that UCB video of the guy getting arrested at UCB when the guy was doing stand-up?
No.
Yeah, it's out there on YouTube. Oh, nah. It's wild. And he gets heckled by the cop.
Oh, as he gets arrested?
He's doing a little crowd work. He starts talking to the cop, and he says, you shut your fucking mouth. And then when the cop leaves, the guy on stage, I think I can understand why he wouldn't say this to the cop. I'd be a little freaked out too. But he's just like, isn't that funny? The cop just told me to shut my fucking mouth. That's what my job right now is, to run my fucking mouth.
Yeah.
That's why there's a light on me and there's a microphone in my hand.
Yeah. It's all about me in this moment.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how many one-person shows have you done in total?
The amount, probably 7 or 8. And of the ones that are on my website for someone to be like, this dream thing of someone just being like, come and do that at this venue, it's probably 4 or 5 that I would in a heartbeat up and do. you know.
Nice. Which are those? Are any of those like available, or do you have stuff online?
Yeah, there's clips from a lot. So I'm at dtlawson.com, DTLAWSON, and just kind of running down. There's VCR Love about porn.
Great.
There's Insomnia in Space, which I hate sleep. My ultimate superpower would be not having to sleep. And
me too.
And basically, that's
just out all night.
That's the germ of the show, and that's basically like a sleepless night from 12 to 6, just rantings and ravings. There's No Odd Job, which is kind of similar to VCR Love, but it's about video games, how like video games, and not even just about like permeating the culture. Let's see, and then Flyer Guy, and I tried doing a character show called Spermicide. That I couldn't really tap into that world as much. There was just one production of that one.
Gotcha.
And Spermicide's just about like all the miserable men in America I hate, like men's rights activists and you know,
the kind of guys that we have to prove that we're not.
Yeah. And even like certain things, like there's a character in that show, the kind of guy, I'm not very well traveled, and I always hated in college when people would go to Europe and be like, everything there is better. Everything there is better.
That's ridiculous. Like I happen to travel a lot more than I used to right now, but I'm still not going to be like, oh, none of this is good. There is good pad thai in the United States, but there's also really good pad thai in Thailand. I like to have a perspective on it.
And the whole joke that I made in that one, by the way, is like the character's just like, oh, I really loved Europe. I really felt in place there. Everyone was white. Everybody was white everywhere I went. And to which some people are like, that's not true in all the cities. I'm like, but you know what I'm getting at. It's not this, crazy batshit madness, 160 languages spoken in 5 boroughs craziness,
Exactly. And sometimes I wish, and if you're an audience member at a show and a joke happens and you start fact checking it in your head, remind yourself that it's a bit.
Yeah, I'm not an elected official.
Yeah, not that would make any difference anyway.
Yeah, that's God. I just keep. Yeah, I'm not. The thing I always think is I'm not a politician, and this isn't about you.
Exactly.
And that should like be on the wall at comedy clubs.
Oh, that's a good idea. I'm not a politician, and this isn't about you.
Yeah,
those are words to live by.
That's like whenever people talk PC wars and all that, that's the one thing I could like hold to more than anything else. Like, don't get me wrong, if someone's offended by something, I'd be like, hey man,
I'm not yet. I don't think any of us are trying to hurt people in the audience.
Yeah, but at the same time, sometimes I will put stuff on Facebook. I'm like, I am trying to piss somebody off, aren't I?
Yeah.
Like, I am having so much fun with Bernie Sanders.
Mm-hmm.
It's because people are so sincere and devoted. And I like Bernie Sanders, but I've never been like a candidate guy. I never get behind candidates,
Right.
Like, I know who I want to win, but I've never like bought the shirt or anything.
Yeah.
Like recently he just got a Ben & Jerry's flavor.
Did he?
Yeah. That's actually, again, we're
that.
time-stamping this, but that happened today. And I tweeted, I said, hey, look, the multinational conglomerate with a bad environmental record has an ice cream flavor for Bernie Sanders. Unilever loves Bernie Sanders. That's so cool. And some people are like, hey, that guy, he's trying to change things. I'm like, I'm just saying, I'm just having fun over here.
It's the same compromises you have to make when you want to go out onto a Lambeau field and cheer on.
Yeah, the Vikings.
You've got to decide. Sometimes you just have to go, okay, I realize this, but I'm going to let it go, and I'm going to watch the guys in the Qatar Airways shirt try to score goals for my entertainment.
Yeah.
Because the life outside this stadium I want to get away from.
I actually, until now, had forgotten about the football game happening.
Do you want to, because we're coming in for Landon, do you want to check the score?
Yeah, live. You want me to do this live?
Yeah, let's do this. Let's do this live. Let's just
fuck it. We'll do it live.
Yeah, let's just. I could Google it, or I could ask Siri.
Whatever you think is more theatrical.
What
What
is
do
more-
you think is more traditionally theatrical?
What is more traditionally theatrical? And I am googling this, I suggest we talk in righteous gentleman accents.
Yes. You know, the thing is about the
thing-
wild card round of the playoffs.
Yeah, there's a lot of variables, you see, and you got to realize that there's variables of the things and the offense. That's sort of like a gentleman Bill Cosby,
Oh.
which doesn't exist anymore. Sorry. Okay, so it's
Here's the thing. I'll if they're really getting their ass kicked, I'll get mad, fake mad, because at this point with DC sports, I'm becoming what Boston fans were in the '90s. I'm just like, are they gonna fuck it up this year? Like,
well, I'm not sure how it happened this year, but there's about 4 minutes and 30 seconds in the fourth quarter, and the Packers are up 35-18.
whoa, baby.
So I'm not saying it's impossible, but it seems unlikely.
Oh, hey, I just can't believe they won their shit-stained division.
Yeah, that was when I saw that, because I was so used to my mom being so sad about the Redskins. I was like, hey, good for them. They did it.
Oh my God. Well, hey, you know what? I also think, being a guy who has to do shows, now I'm like, well, now I can go do shows the next few Sundays and not be too worried about what's going on.
Exactly. Like last season when
Losers logic at its finest. Like,
it's every cloud does have a silver lining.
I guess, but
doesn't
man, the amount of shit like Kirk Cousins would get in his post-game conference. He's the Redskins quarterback.
Sure.
If he was just like, well, I did have a lot of plans for my Sundays in January, so now I'm happy that I don't have to compete for the thing I probably dreamed about since I was 2.
Yeah, there is always next year. How are my knees? Okay, maybe there's next 2 more years.
See, and the other cool thing about being a real hometown guy like I am with DC Sports is you always have the other competing team in town, which right now is the Washington Capitals, off to their best start in franchise history, but no team I root for has broken my heart more. They probably made me funnier.
The Capitals.
Yeah. Artie Lang has a theory that Boston comedy has suffered since 2001.
Because the Red Sox are good.
And the Pats, that's when the Pats won their first, and then it's just gone. The Bruins 1-1, the Celtics 1-1. Like, it's hurting comedy in Boston.
Yeah. Well, hopefully the franchise can take a dip so we can get another good generation.
I feel like New York comedy's still been pretty good, and the Yankees got one, the Giants got one since I've lived here.
True.
Yeah.
Well, gosh, David, thanks for. I appreciate you coming over and doing this again.
Yeah.
'Cause, I know I had some trouble with my audio last time, but I always like
and there it is.
bring it in under the wire. Bring it in under the wire.
The second I sat down, Will, I was like, oh. Before we start, Will, are you going to mention that we fucked up the other show? Are we going to know right now if this whole one is fucked up?
I've been watching it the entire time, so I think we're good.
We're good?
Yeah.
Or we're not good?
Yeah. So before we get out, I want to make sure that we plug our upcoming double bill. So me and David are going to be doing our respective one-man shows. I'm going to be doing mine, Laughing Through the Sad. David Lawson's going to be doing his Flyer Guy. Mm-hmm. We're at Bunga's Den, which is 137 West 14th Street in Manhattan.
Look at that address, 137th West 14th.
On January 23rd at 8 p.m., we're at a place called Bunga's Den. It's a free show. So
I'm just impressed you just knew more than the cross streets.
I put that address in a couple of posters before my girlfriend was like, let me do it, please.
Yeah.
I didn't pick good enough fonts the first time. But our fonts now are good. So again, follow either of us on Twitter. I'm at Comic Will Carey.
And I am at DT Lawson, DTLAWSON.
And hopefully we'll see you on the 23rd. I appreciate you doing this, Dave.
Hey, thank you, Will.
Okay, folks, that's our show. As always, you can check out my website, willcareyisfunny.com. That is Will, C-A-R-E-Y, isfunny.com. You'll find links to my Twitter, YouTube, all relevant social media platforms, and I will have contact info for my guest, David Lawson, in the description below. And again, please, if you're able to, New York City, January 23rd at 8 p.m., me and David will be doing a double bill at Bunga's Den. That is January 23rd at 8 p.m., and I hope to see some of you guys out there. And thank you for listening, and I will catch you next week between awesome and disaster. Thank you. Have a good one.